This is not a typical true crime case. There is no single villain, only a system, an violation so widespread borders on a crime against humanity.
A government-run birth control program on indigenous population, without consent, without transparency, and without accountability. This wasn't centuries ago, this wasn't some distant dictatorship, it happened in Greenland, under modern democracy. Thousands of Inuit women and girls were fitted with IUDs, many before they even understood what was being done to them. Some were teenagers, some were children. Most didn't learn the truth until years later.
It sounds impossible, like something we should have outgrown long ago. But it happened recently, and on a massive scale. If you really want to understand how something like this could even happen, how an entire population could be violated in silence, you have to go back to the political reality of Greenland at the time.
In the 1960s and 70s, Greenland wasn't self-governing. It was fully administered by Denmark, politically, medically, and legally. Every hospital, every clinic, every major decision was controlled from Copenhagen. At the same time, the Arctic was changing. New infrastructure, new industries, modernization. And with it came a Danish fear that the Inuit population was growing too quickly. Their solution, a massive secret birth control campaign. An internal report uncovered decades later is bluntly labeled a coil campaign. Doctors implemented the campaign across Greenlandic towns and settlements, often during school health examinations or local clinic visits. Girls as young as 12 were told it was routine medical procedure or part of a standard public health care. Consent was rarely requested, and in many cases the girls were not informed that an IUD was being inserted, only that the exam was necessary.
Thousands of young girls were affected, most without even knowing it.
For some, the only hint that something was wrong came years later. Persistent pain, unexplained bleeding, infections, or infertility. Others found out by accident, during pregnancy scans, during emergency procedures, or when the X-ray revealed an IUD they never knew existed. Those were not isolated incidents. An independent investigation documented more than 350 women and girls who came forward with first-hand accounts of the procedure. But the government estimates and historical records suggest the true scale was far greater. Roughly 4,000 Greenlandic women and girls were fitted with IUDs during the campaign, amounting to about half of all women of fertile age in Greenland at the time. And because medical records and decision-making were controlled by Danish authorities, many families had no idea what was happening in their communities. This isn't just about medical abuse. This is about power, specifically colonial power, exerted through reproductive control. And the message was clear: your body belongs to the state. If you look at the Danish explanation from the time, it sounds cold, technocratic, and almost clinical. Public health, family planning, managing resources. But peel back the language and what you see is something familiar across history. When a dominant group fears that a minority population is growing too quickly, they control it. This has happened in US, in Canada, in Australia, in Sweden. Indigenous women were sterilized, experimented on, or subjected to forced contraception in the name of so-called progress. Governments rarely used word control. They used words like science, efficiency, modernization. But the effect is the same: loss of autonomy disguised as public policy. The Greenland case isn't an exception. It's part of a global pattern in which marginalized communities become test sites for ideas powerful people would never apply to themselves. For decades, this story barely surfaced. Many of the women who lived through it carried quiet shame, some believing it was their own misunderstanding, others thinking no one would believe an indigenous woman over the state. But in the 2010s and 2020s, momentum finally built. Journalists and independent investigators uncovered internal Danish government documents, medical records, and reports detailing the so-called coil campaign. By the mid-2020s, more than 350 women had come forward to share their experience, and ongoing research suggests that 1,000 more have been affected. Media outlets, including AP News and Danish national media, reported extensively on the findings, forcing the Danish government to acknowledge the scale and impact of the program. In 2025, the Danish Prime Minister issued an official apology, calling the campaign systematic discrimination, and acknowledging the state's role in violating women's rights. Yet, even with an apology, the consequences remain. Greenlandic women are still seeking compensation. Many continue to suffer physically and emotionally, and some are only discovering the IUDs that were inserted decades ago.
Even decades later, the consequences are still felt.
This isn't just about Greenland. It forces us to confront a deeper question about gender, power, and autonomy. How much control should a government have over women's bodies, especially when a policy are framed as being for our own good? When does medical authority cross the line from care into coercion? Who gets to decide what happens to a woman's reproductive system and who doesn't? The Greenland IUD scandal is a chilling reminder that even in peaceful, democratic societies, abuses of power often happen quietly. Not with violence, not with spectacle, but with paperwork, with medical charts, with doctors saying this is just a routine. And what's most disturbing is how easy it was. No coercion at a gunpoint, no physical force. Just a system that treats women, especially young women, not as people, but as vessels to be controlled, manipulated, and violated.
True crime often focuses on a single villain, a killer, a predator, a monster, but sometimes the crime is committed by the very institutions meant to protect us. The Koi campaign is not just a historical scandal, it's a warning. A reminder that the most dangerous forms of control are the ones we don't see until decades later. It asks us to stay awake, to question, to protect the autonomy of those who are the easiest to silence, because if history has taught us anything, it is when a society stops valuing the rights of its most marginalized people, the next victims are never far behind.